You're listening to The Observing Eye. Pirate radio for the mind. Coming at you fresh from the computer hell cabin.
Hello, you beautiful lot. It's Friday, the 19th of April, 2024, and you're listening to episode 61 of The Observing Eye, coming at you live from the computer hell cabin. Every week, we get psychological, philosophical, and all manner of introspective. I'm David, and this week, we're venturing to 18th century Scotland to explore the philosopher who shook the world, David Hume. Imagine a world where everything you believe about how things work is called into question. What happens when the very idea of cause and effect, the bedrock of understanding why things happen, is shattered? Get ready, because that's exactly what the 18th century Scottish philosopher David Hume did. Some called him brilliant, others a dangerous skeptic. But there's no denying it. His radical ideas left a mark that we still feel today. Born into a well-to-do Scottish family, Hume was no ordinary thinker. While his peers studied law, he was drawn to philosophy. Inspired by the likes of John Locke, he became obsessed with understanding how our minds make sense of the world. But this wasn't just armchair theorizing. Hume pushed his own mind to the limits, enduring a kind of philosophical crisis that would shape his groundbreaking work. Today, we are diving into the mind of David Hume. We'll explore how his relentless skepticism challenged our assumptions about the world, the self, and even the foundations of science and morality. And perhaps, most importantly, we'll ask how this philosophy, born centuries ago, still offers a surprisingly practical lens for navigating our own messy, unpredictable lives. Let's set the scene. 18th century Edinburgh, a bustling city on the cusp of the Scottish Enlightenment, a whirlwind of intellectual energy and debate. Here, young David Hume, born into a privileged family, finds himself drawn not to the legal profession his family expected, but the consuming questions of philosophy. It's important to understand that Hume wasn't just reading these dusty old literary books. He was deeply influenced by the spirit of his time, shaped by the ideas of empiricists like John Locke. Empiricism emphasized the importance of experience, of observation, as the primary source of knowledge. This planted a seed in Hume's mind. If what we know comes from the senses, how reliable is that knowledge, really? But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Hume, in his early 20s, spent several formative years in France. It was here, amidst intense philosophical study, that he underwent a kind of intellectual crisis. He began to question everything, the foundations of logic, the nature of reality itself. This wasn't a casual doubt, but a profound internal struggle that left him, at times, on the verge of despair. For Hume, embracing the power of the human mind wasn't as simple as his fellow Enlightenment thinkers made it seem. He understood that our experience of the world is a complex and often messy process. Our senses deliver an onslaught of information, sights, sounds, the texture of things, fleeting emotions, and our minds try to make order from the chaos. But the more carefully Hume examined his own thoughts, the more fleeting and changeable they seemed. He couldn't lay hold of a solid, unchanging notion of the self. Instead, there were moments of joy, flashes of anger, anxieties, bursts of inspiration, a constant flow that never seemed to coalesce into a stable identity. This was deeply unsettling for someone who sought bedrock truths. Hume's doubts didn't stop there. He realized our minds have a habit of extrapolating. We see certain events happening together consistently and jump to the conclusion that one causes the other. Fire equals heat, for example. We quickly learn to associate the two. But do we ever see causation itself, or just this repeated pattern? This simple but profound observation struck at the heart of how we build our understanding of the world. Imagine Hume during this period, isolated, consumed by doubt. It's easy to picture this as dry intellectualism, but it's vital to remember the emotional and psychological turmoil inherent in such radical questioning. This was no mere academic exercise. It was the unravelling of his own perception of reality. Yet, there's a certain audacity in Hume's crisis. Instead of allowing his doubts to paralyse him, he chose to forge them into a philosophical tool. If our minds are prone to error, to hasty conclusions, then perhaps relentless questioning was the only path towards a clearer, even if unsettling, view of reality. From this turmoil emerged something remarkable. Instead of giving up, Hume decided to turn his skepticism into a method. Why pretend to have certainty when the workings of the mind were so complex, so prone to illusion? It was this commitment to rigorous questioning that would eventually lead to his most radical ideas. And now, a quick word from our sponsor. Well, actually, there is no sponsor, and there never will be. I have no intention, motivation, or desire to allow an external influence to change how I'm presenting this information to you. So if you like what you hear, go and press the subscribe or follow button to this podcast and show your support. It lets me know that I'm on the right track with the content I'm producing, and this is the sort of stuff that people want to hear. Many thanks, and much love. From the ashes of his philosophical breakdown, David Hume rose with a set of ideas so audacious, so contrary to common sense, that they would change the way we think about everything from science to our own sense of self. This is where it gets interesting, and perhaps more than a little unsettling. Let's start with one of his major works, A Treatise of Human Nature. Don't be fooled by the dry-sounding title. This book was a philosophical bombshell, even if its initial reception was underwhelming. Within it, Hume lays out his core arguments, meticulously dissecting the way our minds work with an almost surgical precision. There are three key ideas that he presents within A Treatise of Human Nature, and we're just going to run through those briefly to give you an understanding of what they are. So the first is impressions versus ideas. In this, Hume invites us to examine the raw material of our thoughts. He makes a distinction between vivid impressions, our direct sensory experiences of the world, the redness of an apple, for example, the feeling of heat or the sound of laughter, and ideas, the fainter copies of these impressions that linger in the mind, such as simply imagining an apple or remembering a feeling of warmth. Why does this matter? Because, Hume argued, that all our complex thoughts, beliefs, and even theories about the universe ultimately stem from these basic ingredients. Now, his second idea is called the problem of causation, and you might want to buckle up for this one because this one gets interesting. In the problem of causation, Hume targets the very heart of how we think the world works, cause and effect. We assume if one event consistently follows another, there must be a causal relationship. Drop a glass, it shatters. But, Hume asks, do we truly perceive the cause? We see the glass falling, the impact, then the shards. Where exactly is the necessary connection, the thing that forces one event to produce the other? His startling conclusion: we don't actually observe it. We infer it based on repeated experiences. This throws a wrench into the gears of science itself, which rests upon the idea of predictable causal laws governing the universe. And then his final key idea is the illusion of self. Hume wasn't done turning our world upside down. If you look within yourself, he suggests, can you pin down a stable, consistent you amidst the constant flux of thoughts, sensations, and emotions? He believed our sense of self is merely a convenient fiction, constructed from the ever-shifting stream of our internal experiences. As you can imagine, Hume's radical skepticism wasn't exactly met with applause in all corners. His challenges to core philosophical and existential assumptions made him a controversial figure, to say the least. Many of Hume's contemporaries felt his ideas simply flew in the face of everyday experience. Could it really be that we don't know for sure if the sun will rise tomorrow? That our very sense of a continuous self is a mere illusion? This skepticism seemed to undermine the foundations of knowledge and even basic sanity. There was also concern that his ideas undermined current ideas of morality. If there's no rational basis for our moral beliefs, if they stem merely from emotions and social conventions, as Hume suggested, where does that leave us? Critics feared his philosophy would lead to moral anarchy and a breakdown of social order. Some believed that Hume wasn't just challenging ideas, but eroding the trust we place in our own minds and the world around us. Where, they questioned, does this relentless doubting lead? If we can't be certain about anything, does that cripple our ability to make decisions and act in the world? There were some philosophers who argued that Hume contradicted himself. While he claimed to expose the limits of human reason, he himself employed elaborate reasoning to reach his skeptical conclusions. Does this suggest reason has more power than he acknowledged? And then, unsurprisingly, religious thinkers saw a threat in Hume's work. If our understanding of causation is flawed, it throws a wrench into classical arguments for the existence of God, since these arguments often rely on the idea of a first cause. Hume's careful analysis of the limits of reason was used by some religious opponents to bolster faith as a necessity beyond mere rationalism. It's important to understand that these weren't just knee-jerk reactions. Hume tackled fundamental questions that thinkers grapple with even today. His unflinching skepticism forced philosophy out of comfortable complacency and ignited debates that continue to influence how we think about knowledge, morality, and our place within the cosmos. David Hume wasn't content to just tear down old ways of thinking. His philosophy, amidst the rubble, offers some intriguing insights relevant for our own complex and often chaotic world. Let's see how his ideas resonate centuries later. Remember the problem of causation? Modern science has come a long way since his time. We have elaborate models and theories to explain the workings of the universe. Yet, at a fundamental level, Hume's point remains relevant. Scientific laws describe regularities in nature, patterns we consistently observe. Can science actually prove the ultimate necessary connection between events, or is there always an element of faith, however well justified, that the patterns will hold? Hume believed our sense of right and wrong stems from emotions like empathy and social utility, not divinely ordained ethical truths. In a modern world grappling with shifting cultural norms and complex moral debates, this perspective feels remarkably relevant. It suggests that morality isn't simply handed down, but something we must continually negotiate and evolve based on our shared human experience. Debates around race, gender identity, and economic inequality force us to confront the fact that our moral codes evolve over time. Hume's view on morality, as rooted in shared emotions and social needs rather than timeless laws, helps us understand the dynamism of these contemporary struggles. In an era of information overload, fake news, and deep distrust of institutions, Humean skepticism feels like a timely antidote. It's not about denying facts, but about exercising healthy critical thinking. He reminds us to question the assumptions behind our beliefs, to be mindful of the limits of our own perspectives, and to remain open to revising our understanding in light of new evidence. Today, where echo chambers and filter bubbles reign supreme, Hume's skepticism is vital. He'd warn us that everyone, regardless of political ideology, constructs their view of the world based on limited information and inherent biases. Acknowledging this human limitation is the first step towards bridging divides, or at least understanding where others are coming from. It's easy to see Hume as a pessimist, but his brand of skepticism could actually be empowering. By admitting what we don't know, we open ourselves up to the possibility of learning and changing. It creates a humility that seems in short supply in our modern, often strident discourse. Hume's philosophy doesn't offer easy answers, but perhaps it offers something more valuable: tools to navigate uncertainty, questions to challenge our own biases, and an invitation to see the world with fresh eyes, knowing that the process of discovery is never truly over. David Hume might seem like the last philosopher to offer practical advice. After all, the man questioned pretty much everything. But maybe his relentless self-examination and honesty about our human limitations have something to offer us here in the 21st century. One way to harness Humean skepticism is to become a keen observer of your own thoughts. Notice how quickly we jump from a simple sensory impression, a fleeting sight, a sound, an emotional flash, to grand conclusions about ourselves or the world. Simply becoming aware of this leap, of how these fainter ideas build upon our raw impressions, can be a powerful tool for self-understanding. Another practical application: try embracing uncertainty. It's undoubtedly uncomfortable, but imagine, the next time you face something that challenges your worldview, taking a Humean approach. Accept that absolute certainty on most things is a luxury we rarely have, and cultivate an openness to the possibility that there might be other valid perspectives, information you haven't yet encountered. Hume also reminds us that reason and emotions aren't at war, but dance together. Paying attention to those subtle emotional cues, the quickening of the pulse, the hesitation before speaking, can offer vital insights into the true motivations behind our decisions and our sense of what's right and wrong. Understanding these emotional currents doesn't mean giving in to them blindly. It's about being fully informed as we navigate choices, both big and small. Finally, Hume teaches us the value of healthy skepticism. Question the sources of information you encounter, whether it's social media rants or sensationalist news stories. Seek evidence, question motives, and always be aware of the possibility of your own biases. Humean skepticism is a powerful tool, but it's important to avoid falling into lazy relativism or intellectual paralysis. This isn't about believing nothing matters or that all ideas are equally valid. Instead, it's about a constant refining of our understanding, a willingness to change our minds in light of new evidence, and a greater acceptance of life's inherent complexities. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have to say on the subject of David Hume. David Hume wasn't a comforting philosopher. He forced us to confront the limits of our knowledge and to question the very foundations of how we make sense of the world. His unflinching skepticism is unsettling, a reminder that the quest for absolute certainty may often be a fool's errand. Yet there's power in Hume's radical honesty. He showed us the dangers of building grand philosophical castles on the shifting sands of our limited perceptions. And while he might have shaken the world, he also gave us tools to navigate it with more clarity, humility, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. Whether we agree with all of his conclusions or not, Hume's legacy lies in his relentless questioning. He reminds us that philosophy isn't just about finding the right answers, but about the courage to keep asking better questions. I want to thank all of you for joining me on this journey today. I hope that it's challenged you to question your own ideas, your own certainties, and will enable you to approach life with a fresh perspective. As always, if anything in this episode has resonated with you in any way, then I'd love to hear from you. You can share your stories via Substack at theobservingeye.com or on social media. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@theobservingeye and on TikTok and Instagram with the handle @theobservingeye as well. Do you find Humean skepticism liberating or terrifying? How might you incorporate a healthy dose of doubt into your own life? Remember, the true adventure of knowledge lies not in unassailable certainty, but in the ongoing journey of wonder and critical reflection. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.
You've been listening to The Observing Eye. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I hope it's been useful. And if you're interested in any more of my writing or work around psychology, philosophy, and general day-to-day living, please go and take a look at my Substack, which is theobservingeye.com. And that's I as in the letter, not I as in the gelatinous organ through which you see. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.